Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm just going to do a video on Awake Souls. They just posted about an hour-long video on Christian simulation theory, and I just want to address this. I watched like a quarter of it, but I just decided, to turn on the recorder and then do a commentary. And, to me, this is scary. But I think, again, for the few people that are drawn to my channel, and I would say are truly awake souls, there's some irony in their channel name and also in the title of this video that I'm going to review. We know what's going on, that this is just a distraction from what's really going on, in the world, economically, religious, scientific, and all that kind of stuff. But this is just to divert people, to give them an earthly explanation, of the things going on in the world. And it could have more sinister objectives, and I suspect that it does. And maybe we'll see that in this video explicitly. But, it's about an hour long. I'm just going to play it, and pause it so you'll hear his voice. I'll try and turn the volume up so, it gets registered easily. But there's two guys, I guess, who make up Awake Souls, and this is one of them. And I guess this is the one who's been in this, quote, simulation concept, for the shorter period of time. The other one is more advanced, I guess, in it. But first and foremost, just a critique of the title. It's contradictory. Christian simulation theory. Already, there's problems here, just with the label itself, because Jesus describes himself as the truth. And so that's not a theory, anything that he would be sharing. Anything that is, quote, Christian, if we think of Christian as Christ, the embodiment of perfection on earth, he is truth. So that's not a theory. There should be no, quote unquote, theories, surrounding, Christ and his ministry and the things that we're to understand about that. And so putting Christian and theory together is very, very strange. Theory is meant for, things going on the earth that we don't understand, and that kind of thing. And so if this is meant to be something that's Christian and a theory, then it should not be, purported as like anything very, true or solid. And so I'm curious to see what level of fervor he puts behind this, quote, theory. But, to me, that's very, very dangerous to put something forward in any kind of, with a strong backing, and then, call it a theory. And so there are things that, I have that are theories about, the Bible, and things that I would say are extra biblical or extrapolations, but I don't share those, and push those as true, or something really worthwhile to think about, because they are very, very small in comparison to the things that are obvious that are going on in the world. And so, again, I'm curious to hear his level of fervor and his reason really for sharing these kind of things relative to the other truths, that are out there that are pretty much obvious. And I posted a video of my core beliefs, 6 of them. 5 of them are, I would say, on the, quote, macro level. And then the one that's on the day-to-day is one sin equals all sin. And to me, that's that's enough for most people to digest. Us to wait and see whether those few that are not manifested yet are true. And then, that's a lot. Those 6 truths are difficult enough to sort of wrap our head around, much less attempting to with something called Christian simulation theory. And so simulation, to me, is already going down the wrong path, because it can't be a simulation from the God of the Bible. It would have to be a conditioning. And that's not a theory. That's in the Bible in many, many places, that all of this for us, except Jesus Christ, who is perfect and doesn't need to be conditioned towards anything because he is already one with the Father and perfect, is a conditioning, for those who are being conditioned. And if a person out there does not sense that they're being conditioned or care about that, they're not, they're just an actor. They're not even saying that they're good or bad. They're just an actor on God's left-hand side. And so that is not a theory, that's just obvious. And so what I get now, and I think, again, it's obvious for a lot of people, is that these people who are leading trying to lead other people astray, hopefully not succeeding, but they're talking more about this kind of stuff. They're trying to make everything, they're trying to take God out of it, and they're trying to take, our experience and, our personal journey through this on earth, to just trivialize it, and to like either quantify it in this case, or just, just say that it's not important, and I'm talking even like religious people and like quote unquote Christians and flat earthers and stuff. So my channel will, kind of resist that and say that God is actually doing an optimization on the individual level, and he will care about the things that we've done. And one would think that he would have to then be able to like reference those for those that again are being conditioned by the God of the Bible, reference those and then use them to do something else, and obviously more productive than the stuff that we're doing here on earth, because it's completely evil, and so that's another thing that I have a feeling they will not go in any kind of depth to. To me, these are just like government shills. They're just here again to create a narrative, a distraction against speaking out against the obvious evils in the world. And just looking at the screen, I'll post a link to the video below. You're only going to hear the audio, but if you see their introductory screen, it's a person who's like, looking around, and like there's all these numbers and all this, and then all these like meteorites kind of shooting down. And it's essentially, to me, what I have a feeling this is going to be is to quantify God and to put God into a box where he can be understood, through mathematics, through like call him AI or something like that. But for those who kind of understand, and this is not an extrapolation, I say this confidently, that these things are just ideas. We are all ideas. We have to be, just by definition, from causality. We would not think that God would not obey the law of causality, because then he would not be the cause of certain things. And so we have to believe that God caused everything. And so all these things, math, science, physics, biology, chemistry, computer science, everything is an idea, that of God. And so is Jesus Christ. He is his best idea that we have experienced here on earth, for sure. But, and I'm not trying to trivialize this, but these are all ideas. So God has more. God, this is not all that God can do. I want people to be very, very aware of that. And this is man trying to like suck God down into one of our buckets that we've already made. And we don't even really fully understand anyway, because again, and I don't say this to be rude to these people, because, they're trying to, I guess, solve the flat earth, but we don't even have a unique solution to like the flat earth baller debate. So much less going into like quote unquote Christian simulation theory is way above these people's pay grade. Like, like not even close, like to try and link these things together. Why don't they provide us with a unique solution to the ball or flat earth first? They don't even probably know what a unique solution is in mathematics, much less putting the terms Christian simulation and theory in a title of a video and then talking about it intelligently. But let's hear what they have to say.
Back. What's going on, everyone? It's Wednesday, the 4th of December, the end of 2019. How's everybody doing in the chat? Please, we ask only one thing on this channel. It's the Awake Souls channel, but I'm the Limitless. Tonight I'll be your only host. Jason's working. I'm Ron Harris from the Limitless.
Ron
we
Harris.
ask only that you share the stream. We don't ask for donations. We don't monetize. We are simply about the truth. So
right off the bat, they're simply about the truth. I remember I was in their chat box once. I asked them about Jesus' skin color. I asked them about Mystery Babylon. I have a feeling they'll say it's the Vatican. I think they did. Don't quote me on that, but they said something else besides America. Because again, if that's true, that's the focus. That would be what people would need to know, especially if these people live in America, and I think one of them does. That's more important than like, again, this like very, very, very advanced topic that again is just going down a path that will lead and bear absolutely no fruit. So they're not actually about the truth. That's just what it is. Like they're not. Like the mark of the beast, I never hear them talk about that. That's no Christian can avoid that topic in these days. I'm sorry. Like if you don't want to talk about it, then you're just an actor. And then hopefully God will wake some of those people up when it's forced, which it looks like it's going to be soon. But it's not it's contemporaneous. Like it's a topic that is to be discussed right now, And so again, we don't know the timing of when it's going to be forced, but there's no way to kick that can too far down the road. So I challenge their statement in the very least that they're all about truth. Credit to them though for not monetizing, but that also worries me a little bit because when channels do that and very upfront about it, I'm like, well, where are you making your income from? Like, where's the money coming from, and stuff like that. And so if they have jobs and they're doing this, quote, for fun, on the side, credit to them. But sometimes, not all the time, it worries me when people are too proud of that, that their channels are not monetized.
Well, there's a few topics I want to talk about tonight. A little bit more on YouTube censorship. But most importantly, something came across my email screen and I was just absolutely shocked. It was incredible to see that it looks like Christian simulation might be actually catching on. So I don't know if
It has to, because I'm realizing more and more these, like in Flat Earth, they're not reading the Bible, and God is not allowing them to take the Bible seriously. So they need something else, they need another God. They need a quote AI Christian God, and right to the rescue is Awake Soul. So it wouldn't surprise me, and it looks like it's been around for a while. And if this guy's going to talk in a second about how long it's been around, and it's been around for 5 years, which is about the time of Flat Earth. So these people they had Flat Earth in one pocket and then this in the other.
For people that are tuning in now, Jason's been talking about simulation for like 5 years. I've been talking about it for about 2.5. We do go through lots of proofs, lots of things in our supernatural, spiritual realm that really do prove that we are in, for the lack of a better word, a simulation.
We don't even have proof that the Earth is flat yet. And so I have no idea when these people hopped over that, like they don't, and again, like I said, they don't know what a proof is. And so if a person doesn't know what a proof is in mathematics, then why are they overloading that term and then using it here? There's no way we can prove things when just the title of this video says Christian simulation theory. And so they're already on shaky ground. And, again, I'm just highlighting what I hope is obvious to people.
We found the evidence that shows that it is a Christian simulation, one that has the evidence and manuscripts left in what is called the Bible and many other books, the extra canonical books. Can I get a sound check from anyone in the chat? How's the sound one?
Nothing in the Bible does it speak about a simulation. It does speak about predestination, that people are chosen. It speaks of the spirit world controlling the physical world. It speaks about God being a mind controller. I've done videos on that. That's obvious. I do believe we are free to imagine things, but God has the power to veto things. Like if we think about something, he can, stop that from happening, but we're free to imagine, and think things. But ultimately our goings are from God. And that is an actual verse in the Bible, that man's goings are just purely from God. And so he gives us the ability to think that we're free, and actually do have some amount of freedom on the local level, but on the macro level, and this whole narrative is completely up to God. That's biblical, so this notion of a simulation, to me, these people are wolf in sheep's clothing.
Do I need to turn it up? Do I need to turn it down? Just getting a check here, if anyone can let me know. So, we go through many points. Mandela effect. There's also, observations that we make of the sky, the stars, the sun, the moon, miracles that take place. There's so many different simulation proofs that we have, and we will be getting more in detail into these topics moving forward into 2020. And I had to go live and share with you guys this article that I found. Still haven't got a sound check from anyone in the chat. I know most of it's good. Sounds good. Thanks, Empty. I guess we'll get into this. I'll switch up the screen share here. Let's go through this article. So this article came across, I'll put it in the chat. It came across my email from Cora, some sort of subscription that I'm with. was just like, okay, let's check this out. So this is off Hacker Noon. It says religion and the simulation hypothesis. Is God an AI? Part 1.
Just right off the bat, what's the point of reading anything that says, is God an AI? Part 1, first of all, question mark. That's insane. It's like, that makes absolutely no sense for somebody to put these terms back to back and then, take them seriously. How can God, somebody who like is thinking about God in a real way, first of all, how could he be artificial? And then how could artificial intelligence be associated with God? That doesn't make sense. So just the fact that somebody is reading this article from Hacker Noon, and then taking it seriously, and then it's a hypothesis, and this. Let's hear what's going on.
So, one of the main reasons that I wanted to read this is because the simulation realization was rolled out, generally with the movie The Matrix, if everyone has seen it. Where they started to have people think that, maybe they're not in the same type of reality that they are. But the truth is that the supernatural reality that we're in has never been a concrete, physical, Big Bang reality. So what they've done is they've rolled out disinformation campaigns. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who else? Elon Musk, all these guys they put them out and then they send them out there with this absolute horrible simulation hypothesis where they start talking about, we're in a simulation created by a child in his basement from the future. It's just absolute nonsense because they're never going to take it to observational proofs and the scriptures. But what I have noticed is there is a large group of people that are waking up to the fact that, especially in so-called science, they're finding that there's too many things that lead you to believe that this is a created place. The cosmonautical constant, the fine-tuning of the reality, which the so-called scientists have crunched the numbers on, and they found out that there's absolutely no way that
I think you meant to say non-created place.
That this place could have evolved. It's like walking into a cathedral with the ceiling painted and thinking that millions of years and sand being blown around painted this mural in this huge building that just the bricks just sort of just found their way there. A tornado sweeping across a junkyard could never actually make.
So this is good. I mean, he's realizing, whether it's through flat earth or other things, that God exists, and that's good. But I think the thing that I want to also warn people, and hopefully I never do this on my channel, is that it's not wrong to leave our faith in a place where a lot of things are just not known, and the Bible says this in many, many places. Like, how are we supposed to know, what's going on, how an earth was made and humans and a soul and all that kind of stuff. And so we can't go too far, and that's what I suspect is happening here, is that these people, and all of us really, can be tempted to do this, is to go too far beyond that. It's like, if he agrees that this place that we live is created by a creator, attaching words like artificial intelligence, simulation theory, and all these kind of things are not necessary in the very least, and are very likely evil.
A 747. So there's all these different theories, but let's get into this. Do video games and the Matrix provide a scientific basis for religious beliefs? It's an interesting way to start. So note, on the 20th anniversary, let's zoom in here. On the 20th anniversary of the release of The Matrix, MIT and Stanford is releasing his book, The Simulation Hypothesis. An MIT computer scientist shows why AI, quantum physics, and Eastern mystics agree we are in a video game, which explores the scientific, philosophic, and religious bias of the theory. This is one of a series of articles which will explore different aspects of the simulation hypothesis. So for hundreds of years, many well-known scientists were...
We don't need video games and stuff, which are the product of science, and which is establishing cause and effect. Video games, movies, TVs, technology, cell phones, all those kind of things are an output of scientific discovery. But just the fact that we have predictability, and just the fact that, like you were saying earlier, we have something that was made, and so that implies that somebody made it. And so that implies God, and so even if things were not in a quote order, and have some sort of predictability, that would still mean that God exists. It just would infer characteristics about him, and so we're able to infer characteristics about God based on our surroundings, and nature, and then also humans, and then their actions. And so God is present in all aspects, of life, and looking at a video game doesn't add to that. It's just one of the products of science.
Weren't afraid to speak of God, which is a pagan Germanic word, which they're trying to speak of the Creator, which his name is Yahweh. So, or the importance of consciousness. In their writings, ranging from Newton to Einstein, this may partly have sprung initially from not wanting to share the fate of scientists like Galileo, whose research was suppressed by a dominant Catholic Church. Over time, though, as the church became less dominant, I suspect it stemmed from a genuine belief that while science was good at making observations, its reductionist tendencies might not be able to explain the unseen worlds of consciousness often explored by religion. As a result, scientists have steered clear of religion as something that is not scientific.
We cannot understand that. There's no way, there's no amount of development that could do that. We'd have to understand the full construction of the human body, the physical aspects. Modern day science barely understands, and is just pumping in random, pharmaceuticals, and which are at best are just band-aid solutions to certain things, and part, in my opinion, of a very, very evil agenda to keep people hooked on that. But we don't even know the human body very well. Like I said, we don't even have a unique solution to the shape of the earth that we stand on. So he's in way over his head, and much less the spirit. Like, what is that thing that would leave a person's body and enter into a new dimension, another dimension? There's no way a human can understand that. That's not a matter of time or anything like that, because once that is there, a person has that kind of understanding. It would invoke God, because that is something that is not bound by time, and so it would be eternal. And so once you have anything eternal, you're in the spirit world, you're in the presence of God. And so we have no hope to understand that. So this is futile.
And should only be studied by sociologists. Recently, the theory has emerged, which is causing a lot of scientists to look again at age-old religious concepts. And both video games and science fiction have provided a key part of this new model. This theory, the simulation hypothesis, is the idea that what we perceive as physical reality is actually a computer-generated simulation, like a super sophisticated video game, as depicted in the movie The Matrix. This month marks the 20th anniversary of the release of this groundbreaking film. While the film had many religious overtones, the emergence of a messiah to save the human race, it emerged as a cultural phenomenon beyond most other films of its day because of its central thesis that we live in a simulated world and that there is another world beyond what we can see. So this is absolutely true. The last statement that I'm reading here, we all know that this is just a time that we pass through here, and there's many people who've had near-death experiences that have spoke about the other place where they went was much more rich. And
to me, this is very sad, that first of all, we're on a Hacker Noon website with a ridiculous title, that we've stooped so low that we don't want to worship God, ultimately, the God of the Bible, and learn more about him. These people will not acknowledge that Jesus is black. They don't know a lot of the basics, but they'd rather go down here and really entertain absurd ideas, presented by video game people, and try and squish the Bible into that, world, instead of bringing them to us, to the truth, other truths like the mark of the beast, Mystery Babylon, Jesus is black, who are the Jews, everything, the flat earth and all that kind of stuff, God exists and all these kind of things. So it's, they're not actually evangelizing. They're already on that side. You know, they're already these video game people. They're just posing to be Christians. You know, these people like Awake Souls and Mark Sargent's, they're already from that camp. They're trying to actually pull people over there. And I would just say, for people that have any amount of brain cells, don't go over there. It's just, first of all, this already in the first 11 minutes of this video is proof that these people have no idea what they're talking about.
More sensory overloads and more smells and touch and feelings. And this place here is like a super daft, kind of cold place. So I do agree with that.
They won't go into the fact that the Bible teaches that this is hell. You know, the Bible teaches, in the very least, that there are hellish things, you know, going on here on earth, and you will never get that from them. And so he's proving it right now, that this is very much a called lower dimensional for math people. Of all the different things that are going on in the spirit world, we are limited, you know, limited in information, mobility, even in truth, you know, to some extent, and, you know, our senses, all that kind of stuff, you know, and so they won't go into that. You know, that's a better thing to actually read and teach, that the Bible teaches.
That statement. This is the first of 2 articles that examine how many of these ideas put forth by the world's religions, both Eastern and Western, are not only consistent with the simulation hypothesis, but this new theory may find a way to bridge the ever-widening gap between religion and science. Part 1.
He should know this, that there is no gap between religion and science. Science is just to know things, and but fundamentally, in our understanding today, science is to establish cause and effect. That's God. You know, this cause, you know, everything that is that we see, you know, is a result of God, and so He is the cause of every effect, and so the Bible says that, and so you know, the earth appearing, if we were to witness that, and that would be a phenomenon, obviously. We would attribute the cause of that to God, and then that's the end of the discussion. There's nothing, you know, obviously we're here now and we can explore, but there's no alternate explanation. You know, God is the ultimate scientist because He established things that happen in a predictable way, you know, which is science.
I will focus on the Western religions, specifically God and His angels and the idea of an afterlife, while part 2 will focus on Eastern religions, specifically about the idea of Maya or illusion, karma, and reincarnation. Now, of course, this guy hasn't done his due diligence and actually studied the scriptures and found out that all of these things are actually found throughout the scriptures. You reap what you sow is karma. Reincarnation, they asked, are you John the Baptist?
He does agree that reincarnation is in the Bible, and it is true. And karma is, yeah, you could word that as like, you know, you reap what you sow. And so, again, the Bible, if it's true, you know, it's not like people around the world are just following things that are totally false. They're going to like still have an understanding of true and false and spirituality, and then God will give them some, you know, amount of wisdom. So it's not surprising that these things are taught in other faiths.
And, you know, and Yahushua said that John the Baptist has come. So He has come again and will come again. So reincarnation, karma, trickery, these things are all actually in the scriptures, but it's a very hidden topic. So we'll see how these religious ideas take on a whole new meaning when viewed through the lens of a simulation hypothesis. In fact, this theory may provide a scientific and technological bias for all of these arguments, showing that the unseen worlds described by the world's religions may be more scientific than we thought. So it's hilarious that, you know, Jason and I have been just pounding this home for the last few years, Jason longer, that now we've got people actually starting to write blogs, come out with ideas. You know, it's good to see, but we definitely have to try to fine-tune everything.
The problem with that too is those points, let's just use karma and reincarnation, they support a conditioning narrative. They support the fact that we have some level of autonomy, and we do things, and then we'll reap, you know, those, we'll reap based on those actions. And so that's for conditioning. You know, that's why God wants that. And even just basic things like if, you know, a child touches something hot, like they'll know to not touch that again. And so it's that's karma, and God can override that. God is able to. People can sow into their entire life into living as if, or eating like to get cancer, but God can like veto that. And He has the freedom to just unilaterally do whatever He wants. And so obviously He operates in a logic that we don't know, but He always does that. He's been doing that. He does that every day. And so but that at our level, our understanding is for conditioning. And then so is reincarnation. Reincarnation is just conditioning on a generational scale, on over lifetimes. And so it's not just touching the stove. It's like your entire life now is evaluated, ours, if we were reincarnated. I don't think everybody is. I don't think even everybody has this quote unquote soul, this Holy Spirit that is drawn back to God. But I don't know that for sure. But, and even if we all are, we all may not be to the same amount, like John the Baptist, for example, being the reincarnation of Elijah. We don't know other, roles that he might have played, and how many times that happened throughout human history. And so those things support that narrative, not a simulation narrative.
We're all about the truth here with Team Yahushai. So the Matrix,
they're all about the truth.
So to recap, in the Matrix, Neo, played by Keanu.
The truth is not a theory. So anybody that's in it for the truth should be humble enough to know what we do know as truth, and that's very little, and what things still need to be discovered. So going into this quote theory realm is just not the truth. Like if they caveated this whole video as like just as an FYI, just something to think about, that's a totally different vibe. But they're pushing this. They're trying to draw people into this this way of thinking, and then really it just prevents people from understanding the conditioning that's happening at the individual level, and then God's judgment, which I believe is coming to America soon and the whole world soon.
Reeves is a computer hacker who discovers mysterious references to something called the Matrix online. He eventually meets up with Morpheus, played by Lawrence Fishburne, who explains, unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You'll have to see it for yourself. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you've probably heard of its most iconic scene. Morpheus gives Neo the choice to take the red pill to wake up and see what the Matrix is, or the blue pill and to keep living his life and go back to sleep. Neo takes the red pill and wakes up in the real world to find out that what he thought was reality was actually a sophisticated computer simulation, basically an ultra-realistic video game. And to note, Mark K. Sargent, I think that's his full name, he was the one who came out with this whole reality of the shape of the floor of this place, stating that he would only base his studies on a video game concept, which obviously is more verifiable, observable, and provable than anything that the modern day shape of the floor of the earth crew are selling. So video games, virtual reality, and the idea of a simulated world.
They're all selling garbage.
Hypothesis was once the
not that much competition out there, unfortunately, on the flat earth when it comes to unifying theories and stuff like that. So it's not like Mark Sargent has a whole lot to compete with or against. So I wouldn't give him too much credit for that. But it looks like these people are just, part of God's left-hand side. And then this is just one, element of the mark of the beast. It's just worshiping technology. And again, trying to put God into a technological box. And anything really that has a technological, underpinning or, output is good, and is from God and is okay. And, these people to me are then in charge of the Mark Sargents, the Awake Souls are in charge of drawing in flat earthers and get as many of them to take the mark of the beast, when it's forced.
Domain of science fiction. The creators of the Matrix, the Wachowskis, I can't pronounce the name, they've now turned to women, but claimed to have been inspired by the work of science fiction writer Philip K. Dick, which I've studied Philip K. Dick. He was also the one who predicted the Mandela effect. He said that we're in a computer simulation, and he said this in the 70s, and the only way that we're going to find out that we're in a computer simulation is when things start to go wrong, when things start to change. So fast forward to today, I don't know if he was like talking to demons or what Philip K. Dick was totally about, but he wasn't a scriptural based guy. But anyway, let's get back to this.
These guys aren't scriptural based either. Anybody with common sense would know that there is a certain amount of truth to everything that is out there in the world. It's either true or it's just the opposite, or it has a mixture. And yeah, it is true that people will sort of quote unquote wake up when something changes. And it's the same, with Adam and Eve in the garden. Once they sinned, they woke up, they knew good and evil now, and they were ashamed. And it's the same with us. Like, it's every real, genuine flat earther has the same experiences. We are now waking up to the fact that we are in an imperfect state, and we're at least partially to blame. And so we are the same way. We don't become naked like they did and need to be clothed, but in a spiritual sense, we're starting from scratch. Like, we are made bare, about literally all the things that we know, and then we're starting from scratch, and then we know good and evil, now, and it's and the deception was clever, but it's becoming more and more obvious now for us, because we've been deceived by so much that people like this creeping in unaware, it's just not, for the the people that are really truly know what's going on. Like I would say, the few people that are drawn to my channel, we know that this is just something else from the left-hand side.
Today, this idea is taken seriously by scholars of philosophy. Oxford's Nick Bostrom laid out a simulation argument in 2003. Physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, like I had said, Stephen Hawking, and many of other today's computer scientists. Why is the idea being taken more seriously now? It's because of the evolution of video games and AI technology. In fact, Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and SpaceX founder, made waves with his statement in 2016 explaining the logic. 40 years ago, the state-of-the-art video game was 2 lines and a dot in Pong, which was the first widely available arcade game. Today's MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games, like the World of Warcraft and Fortnite, have created shared virtual worlds inhabited by characters controlled by millions of players. If the fidelity of virtual reality and augmented reality continues to improve, Musk speculated that we will not be able to distinguish between physical and virtual reality. So I don't know if we're ever going to actually get to that point. I'm sure people that don't live according to the way that the scriptures state are probably going to want to try to create some other place where they can, send their consciousness so they don't have to deal with punishment. But that's a whole.
That's happening right now. Like, how is that something that he needs to think about? Is something down the road? These people are living on a different planet, literally. This is scary. How they don't recognize that that's happening right now. There is no amount of karma and reaping and sowing happening in the world right now. People that are running this world, which the Bible says are wicked. And they have completely they don't have a conscience. They don't need a virtual reality world or any more technological advancements to create this. This is the world they live in now, and so it's heaven for them and it's hell for the rest of us. And so the world, in the very least, and I believe that this is actually hell, is hellish. And so they won't go down that road. And so these people, again, they don't request donations and finances and all that kind of stuff, but they're clearly somehow making money off of this system and seem to have no issues with it. And so that alone should sort of speak to whether they're sharing anything from God or not. And that's just, again, the evil is so obvious right now and so absurd that if that's not the main thrust of a person's channel, then to me there's no way that they're speaking on behalf of God, and this is just gibberish, which it is.
Of the story here. While the scientists like Bostrom said little about video games, and Musk said little about uploading and downloading of consciousness, if we take these...
Elon Musk, by the way, EM is 33, and I believe his mom is MM, and she's 33, so they're all on the left-hand side.
Trend to their logical conclusion, we end up at a point where the simulation hypothesis sounds a lot like what all the other religious traditions have been telling us all along. Western Central, Talent, One. And Yahweh said, let there be light. Let's start off with the Western traditions, namely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The title of this is Christian Simulation Theory, or as they are referred to as the Abrahamic line of religions. They share many traits, not the least of which is respect for the Old Testament, the oldest part of the scriptures. Genesis, well, there's also the Cave of Treasures, the book of Adam and Eve, there's the book of Bees, there's still a bunch of other books that get left out, but you got to search our channels for those videos. Genesis from the Old Testament begins with Yahweh saying, "Let there be light," and then there was light. This is followed by a revelation that Yahweh created the earth in 6 days and then rested on the seventh. So Jason and I have been constantly banging home, hello, we're in a computer type of simulated supernatural reality, and the creator actually, it's voice commanded. He spoke creation into being. So again, this is backing what we've been saying.
How does that, what kind of non sequitur is that? Like, he's like looking at everybody like, I wish I could, when you watch the video, if you go to the 17-minute mark, he's like rolling his eyes like, how do people not get this? Like, he just made some kind of major discovery. Like, what does that have to do with the fact that God can speak things into existence? And God's not speaking, you know, he's not sitting there talking to himself. And so like, these are all just ways for us to understand a little bit of what God's doing. And even like the 6 and 7 days, God hadn't even made the earth yet, and he's describing things in days. How can you have a day when you don't even have a sun? You know, the sun describes, you know, a day and its movement. And so these are like, this is insane. Like, it's, you got to watch the video. It's like he just said something super obvious. This is just getting insane. You know, like, the Bible will be a joke very, very soon. I just want to, in the time that I'm here, to prevent that for the few people with common sense. These are all just, not all, but like, this stuff is for us to understand a little bit, you know, and for God to give us a way to, you know, give us something for now, our mind to like wrap our head around what he made, you know. And it can't be a literal 6 days, because there's no day yet, there's no sun yet, and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, if God thinks things into existence, how do we measure that time from when he thought it into when it existed? There's no notion of time yet. And so again, this is trying to put God into a box. And God knows that people are going to read Genesis account and look for little contradictions. You know, oh, how can you do it in a day? Like, this should come first. And God, there's all these people that are going to do that. And it's like, God wants that. He's like, okay, if you don't get it and you're like nitpicking and not just recognizing the fact that, like this guy just said, God spoke things into existence, God thought things into existence, is a better way to think about it, and marvel at that, then, you know, that's fine. You know, just the Bible's not for you.
This is, of course,
and it appears the Bible's not for these guys either.
So this, of course, is one of the areas that's ridiculed by scientists the most. Of course, it takes more than 6 days to form a planet. Well, we don't live on a planet, doesn't it? Or best estimates are that the Earth is billions of years old, which is another absolute nonsense statement. You know, they just make that up. Moreover, if the Earth wasn't yet created, how could you possibly measure a period of 6 days? With the introduction of the simulation hypothesis, however, this part of Genesis starts to take a whole new meaning. If we begin to think about the physical world as a computer-generated reality rather than a physical reality, then this description doesn't sound so outlandish to scientists. In the world of video games, it can take about 6 seconds to spin up a new server or new reality inside a video game. The groundbreaking video game No Man's Sky used fractal algorithms to generate...
Curious about the 6 seconds.
Flora and fauna found 18 quintillion so-called rocky planets. All computer programs, including simulations, have the idea of clock speed, which is the minimum time increment that a particular step can take. Even though we might think of it as an instant, it takes some amount of time to generate any simulated world. These increments inside simulated worlds are set by some generation or step, which is a multiple of the underlying clock speed of the CPU. For example, if the internal clock speed was set 1 millisecond, then it would be impossible to measure less than 1 millisecond. But within a simulation, a day or year or step could be 6 milliseconds or 6,000. So again, we bring back that the scriptures state that a day with the Creator is 1,000 years on earth. So he's literally been telling us throughout the scriptures, throughout time, that these types of programs he has actually enacted. This is the way that he's done this. It's great.
Again, so that's just the 1 day is 1,000 years. Again, is just a way for us to, from an earthly perspective, understand something outside of time. there's no day with God, because again, there's no notion of a day, like, the sun moving or like that. What does that even mean? We can't understand that. It just, again, is just God throwing us some kind of mental nugget, scripture, to help us kind of understand what timelessness is like. And most people, if they have any common sense, would leave it at that, because we don't know. We cannot go into a different realm and then or describe another realm that we've never been to or experienced. And even if people have temporarily, they haven't seen it any complete way. Again, we don't have a unique solution to the ball earth and flat earth debate. So this is just, God's going to laugh at people who wasted their time talking about this kind of stuff. And again, I find it curious at the end of this last thing, it's like 6 milliseconds. It's like the number 6 keeps popping up already 3 times in this, 6 days, 6, and then here, talking about clock speed, and then this other thing here. So God is doing this. God puts 33 and 666 and all that kind of stuff literally everywhere, to let us know, hopefully us people on the right hand side, that that's him, doing that, and to like watch it and observe it, but know what's really going on. Again, this should be obvious to people that, first of all, this whole lecture is pointless. It doesn't mean anything, or cause anybody to do anything, or change their life, or give us better understanding or a closer connection to God. It just brings us those people who want to play video games and like think that that's a religious thing to do. And I'm not saying it's evil, but it's like, that's not the answer. That's like a recreation. That's things that people do, to relax, and to like get out of other stresses. But it's not a mechanism or a vehicle to understand, God and his mind.
Great that other people are bringing some of this to the light. Perhaps more important is the action taken by Yahweh to create the world. In religious traditions, light seems to have a special status. As we look at modern physics, we have found that everything we thought of as the physical world has been proven to be mostly empty space, which a good chance a lot of that is nonsense, right? If, quarks, gluons, all of quantum mechanics, all of this stuff here is just CGI graphics and nonsense.
Again, 99%, it's rotated at 66. We see that, on Wayne Gretzky and other, athletes. 99 is just 66 rotated. So again, we see numerology everywhere.
But we'll get into that later on into the future. Solids versus liquids versus gases are just collections of atoms, which I'd like someone to take a picture of an atom or a molecule and send it to me, moving differently. I know we can zoom in on things and see little particles, but we don't really have we can't see an atom or an electron or a neutron. We can't see any of that. There's no telescope, or there's no microscopes powerful enough. Let's go on here. This lends credence to the idea that the physical universe really doesn't exist. What exists is an arrangement of information that represents the atoms and the molecules. Einstein's theory of relativity found that the only true constant in physics is light, which again has been debunked totally. I've got a video on it debunking the speed of light. Fundamental in physics, we haven't been able to figure out why. Within computer simulations also, light is also special. In fact, computer graphic...
To me, this is just an analogy. The analogy that I would use is like somebody who claims to be really, really advanced in a certain topic, like let's say a mathematician, going to like, a children's book and reading through it, and like, hey, we've been saying this for a while and stuff like that. And, agreeing with some things, disagreeing with other things, but like, what's the point? It's like, why would a person claims to be advanced in mathematics, in this case, the analogy would be spirituality, go to a children's book, a coloring book, and be like, hey, look at what they're saying here in this, this children's book. There's some amount of truth here. What's the point of that? It absolutely bears no fruit. And it's going to give those people who are in this realm, in this case, this video game digital realm, some amount of like credibility, that man, they house some amount of truth, when truth is seeping down, and then small amounts of it are represented, is a better way to say it, in whatever artificial intelligence and video games and movies and all that kind of stuff. Everything fundamentally God made. So obviously his fingerprint would be everywhere, and so it's not like he would just pick, all these, little pockets and just do random stuff in those pockets. even the left-hand side, God's destructive side, deceptive side, have elements of truth. They'll pretend to be humble. They're not actually humble. And they'll, some of them will believe in God, and come across, that they're, faithful and all that kind of stuff. And so they're not operating in completely different, with different laws and rules. Like there's a universal understanding that for most normal people, mentally stable, that humility is a good thing. Like just being excessively arrogant, pompous and all that, it's like we kind of like cringe. And so the left-hand side, people in Hollywood and all that kind of stuff, they'll pretend to be humble, but they're just like using that as like a front, to like just, get more and more, just compliments and followers and all that kind of stuff. And like, I saw a video last night on Netflix. I watched, most of it. And it's like this comedian, Hassan Minaj, is talking about all the different charities and all that kind of stuff. And what really is going on. Like they're just tax shelters. And then like they have like shelters now where you don't even have to like deliver the money to any charity. You can just put it in a holding place. And then so once the stock is really high, if a person like donates, I think it was actually the GoPro guy, donates a bunch of stocks to this like holding, entity and takes the tax write-off for it, then the stock drops. And so they just got the tax break of the higher amount. And so they don't care now. The stock went down and like, so that holding thing is lower value, but they haven't assigned it to anything yet. But they've already received the tax breaks as if that thing was more valuable. And so they're just shelters for like gaming like the tax system, pardon the pun. So God is using, God's footprint and fingerprint is everywhere. It has to be. So I don't understand why this is such a big deal. You could read any article on earth for anything and find some amount of God in it, either half-truths or just the opposite of God. This is not really that, he's like rolling his eyes at us like, oh my God, I've been saying this for so long. It's like you pull up any article and anybody who's somewhat spiritual could read it and discern, what aspect of it reflects God and what doesn't.
Consists of pixels based on information. So this is another thing. Everything breaks down to the pixel level, whether it be your skin, whether it be a zoom in on the horizon, whether it be a computer program. Everything breaks down into pixels. Another reason why we believe we live in a simulation. These pixels are rendered into the physical world that exists.
That's not a proof of anything. This is getting absurd. I didn't get to this point in it and it's getting worse. A pixel doesn't prove that we live in a simulation. I'm sorry. A pixel just proves that certain things that are registering those pixels are represented on a computer, which is discrete, and so that's just the way it is. A computer is not smooth. It is not able to represent an image, for example, in a continuous way. It has to quantize it, quote, quantize it, which means that there are then pixels and it assigns a number. A pixel for an image is a block that is assigned a number, which is a color, and then that's what something else, if it's taking that image and rendering it, will put there in that block. And so that doesn't prove anything. That just proves that computers are discrete.
It's inside the game, what he likes to call the rendered world. The rendering is all about lighting up pixels based on different values to present different colors, to turn a dark screen into a world. Why would the only fundamental in physics be the speed of electromagnetic radiation, which is also the speed at which we send signals inside and between computers? Moreover, the Western religions are telling us explicitly that the Creator created the world in the same way that we would render a video game world, by turning on
These are
lights,
like very, very weak.
In the physical world.
These are very, very weak connections. It's shocking that he's not making fun of this more, but I think we all know what's going on here.
Most religions are concerned with what happens to us after death. In fact, you might say that this is the central issue and the main reason to have the religion in the first place.
That's absolutely true. That is absolutely correct. Video games won't answer that. I'm sorry. Clearly, Awake Souls won't answer that either. The Bible does give us some insight in Second Esdras that I'm going through now and other places what happens, but we can't know in any kind of complete way. Again, we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow here in the body, much less that. So, but that is true, and that is why religion is very, very important. And then, but more fundamentally, why do we die in the first place? Like, why are we here? All that kind of stuff. these are the things that religions are supposed to be there for. And for those out there who have an ear to hear, the Bible is doing a very, very good job of assessing our surroundings right now. It's perfect, I would say, and brilliant. And it's very, very timely. It's explaining that the evil going on right now in the world is orchestrated by God, and it is to lead up to the mark of the beast.
In the Western religious traditions, one of the main teachings is that we have an immortal soul which is judged based upon our actions in this life. The judgment is based on reviewing what we do in the here, in the physical world. I don't know why the article writer basically used the word physical here in this simulation. So this behavior determines where we end up in the hereafter and the afterlife. So this is another thing.
How is using physical contentious? Like, this is where we are now dealing with flat earthers who are, degenerating, but really they already are really reality deniers. And so they have to deny the reality of the evil going on in the world. And so they have to make this something else, and they don't want to talk about physical things going on, pain that people are going through, fear, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And people getting raped, robbed, murdered, all that kind of stuff going on everywhere. Of course we live in a physical world. That's insane. Like, they're not adding anything here, and it's very, very clear they're trying to take people away and take away from the Bible.
Thing that Jason and I have been constantly saying over and over again, we're in, for the lack of a better word, a simulation, a supernatural, spiritual realm.
So all those things that he just said don't jive with each other, first of all. Like, he's rolling his eyes again. The way people teach will tell us what's going on. This guy's spirit's way off. But just looking at, not the qualitative things, just what he said, these things, he's just throwing out a bunch of terms. Like, simulation is not the same as a supernatural realm. I'm sorry. Like, they're not one-to-one. I don't know where in his brain he's connecting those things, and he's making it seem obvious to us, like we should already know this and all this kind of stuff, like just bobbling his head around. I'm at the 22-minute mark. No, I'm sorry. Like, a simulation is very, very different and has literally never been used in religious circles at all, and hopefully will stop at some point soon. So these connections are not at all, obvious, and they're evil, to make those kind of connections. What we do know from the Bible is that this physical world is controlled by the spirit world, and it would have to be if there is a spirit world. You don't even need the Bible to know that, because we'd have to assume that there's a spirit world, and then they know what we're doing here, which would make sense. Like, there was no reason for us to not believe that, especially again if you believe in the Bible or other religions, that they have awareness of our dimension, but we don't of theirs, and so already they have at least slightly more information, and so they're more quote in control than we are. And so, again, the Bible makes that explicit, that not only is that true, there's just one spirit that is in control of all this, and it's the Most High, the Creator. And so this should not be shocking. And so we live in a physical world that is controlled by a single spirit.
And the choices and the outcomes that we make in this time are going to be what decides where we do go. There's no other way for us to.
That's also not true, from a biblical perspective. We don't know how God will use those things that we've done to create, some other, experience beyond, our body. And so they do have, they're a function, I would say, for sure. Like, I don't want to write a formula, but like, there would be a weight put on, what we've done. No doubt. That's obvious. There would be no reason to be here if that were not the case. But again, God then will take those and then do whatever he wants with them. And so to just say one-to-one, that again is to remove God, and his input, which is the only thing that matters, ultimately. And the Bible says there's actually a predestination, which we can't understand, from this realm. How God can look and create things, give us a sense of autonomy and freedom, allow us to, reap what we sow, karma and all that kind of stuff. But again, feel like we're independent, but we're actually not. We don't. How can we understand that? There's no way, and no one's going to have an answer. Certainly not these clowns. But we have to just leave that as a mystery. That to me is a huge door that is open for us to worship God. And to be like, man, that's amazing. Like, you created us. Unfortunately, now we're in a completely evil environment, but we do have many reasons to worship God just by the fact that He gives us some amount of freedom and independence, and then He gifts some of us with truth, and so, a lot of them He doesn't, and so, that's God says that His judgments are based on the amount that He reveals to people, and so that we do know, and that's obvious. That's not really a big mystery, and so it can't be purely based on our actions because a lot of people are doing things that they're programmed to do.
To get around that, I just wish that people would really start to understand that these things are just piling up now. The more that people...
Nothing is piled up, but crap on this whole video. So he piled what? A pixel on top of, just karma, reincarnation, all these kind of things, which have nothing to do with video games or simulation or anything like that. They're in the Bible, but he's piled like nothing, together. He's not created any kind of coherent statement, or all this is just gibberish, to get people away from the real reality and truths that are out there that we should be seeking and appreciating and waiting for.
People try to deny it, the worse it's going to be on them. And another thing, that everything is recorded. We've been saying for years that all your actions, all your thoughts, all your choices, if we're in a simulation, if we're in a reality that's created to give us the option to make these choices, it all is recorded. Now, we do know that the bad stuff will be burned. It's going to be, bleached, or whatever computer term you want.
What is this guy talking about? Oh my God. Like, the fact that we're being recorded is proof that the mark of the beast, is at our doorstep. Not that we're in a simulation, and then we'd have to then just, again, if just a generic God exists and he's creating this evil, one would have to think that he would be doing that for a reason, because it's pretty major agenda. And we'd have to think that he's doing it to like distinguish between two groups of people, those that take it and those who don't. And that's just obvious. The Bible doesn't necessarily explicitly say that in the mark of the beast passage, but it's called the mark of the beast. And so, it's clear that he doesn't want people to take it. And then those who do are going along with a beast. And so those who don't would obviously, recognize that that's not good, in the very least. And so those of us who are kind of further along, we get it, we know that God is behind it. And so this person is just linking things together that make absolutely no sense. And all he's doing is just really, I would say, insulating those verses in the Bible with quote unquote Christian simulation theory. And so people don't have to go there. It's just like, oh, it's just a simulation. Don't worry about those verses. They're not literal, stuff like that. And so these are the most evil people. The Christians, a majority of Christianity right now are completely satanic. They are the worst. They are the scum of the earth, because they are masquerading around as truthers, but presenting nonsense like this. Atheists, they're not required to be faithful. People of other religions except Christianity, they're not required to say one sin equals all sin. So they're not required to be humble, and to worship truth like we do as Christians, because Jesus said that he is the truth. And so they're not required to love truth as much as we do, and all that kind of stuff. So they have I'm not saying it's, God's going to let them all off the hook, but real Christians, there's no getting off the hook, for this kind of stuff. And they're the most sick people, on earth. And I was a part of that problem in the past, and hopefully not to this day. But Christians spouting anything but the Bible and what it says are the worst of the worst. Like Christian Ball Earth, it's the same thing.
Depending on which particular branch of the Western traditions we are looking at, there are variations on the same basic theme. For example, the Catholic Church versus the Eastern Orthodox. In pretty much all of these cases, there is what we might call heaven and hell. In Judaism, again, depending on specific interpretations, there is heaven, which is the Garden of Eden, and hell, which is called Gehenna. In Islam, heaven is called Gehenna, basically the Garden of Milk and Honey.
I got to read this comment in the chat. So-called science doesn't acknowledge anything real. They only promote nonsense. Side note, for some reason, I'm getting the impression that no one is allowed to publicly tell us the truth. Maybe a rule. And this is from a flat earther. This is Matrix Media. I've debated him about the mark of the beast, and he thinks it's something currency or something stupid. Like, these are flat earthers saying this. Like, they're just like, it's like, really, dude? That you just figured that out now? That everything that we're consuming, you know, in the quote unquote mainstream are lies? Like, this is something you just kind of figured out, you know, recently? Like, come on. Oh my God.
And as if to emphasize it's the same place as the Old Testament, hell uses almost exactly the same phrases. How is this determination done exactly? In Islam, which is the newest of these religions, which was made up by the Jesuits, the Roman Catholic Frankists, we are given more specifics. In the Korean,
for those who, again, I would say, I'm not saying that I'm, you know, right next to God, but those who know God and more of the nuances, we know that every aspect of this world is evil. And so we're more inclined, and those scriptures pop out to us more, that we're living in hell. You know, this is the diametrically opposite goings on of Jesus Christ. And that would be hell. There would be no other place, quote unquote, place anywhere or dimension that could be worse than being on the complete opposite of Jesus Christ. What else would there be? You know, there would be a place that would be just like that, or there would be some, you know, hybrid, you know, good, evil somewhere. This is the complete opposite. And again, the closer a person gets to God, I'm not saying, again, like I said, I'm next buddy, but we get it. You know, we know what's going on. We know Christ. We know the way he is based on what he's revealed to us in the scriptures and the way he communicates with us through our life, you know, and just through our thoughts and all that kind of stuff. So I know that everything going on here on earth is completely backwards, you know, and it's not even like Matrix Media just figured it out, but it's not that deep, you know, really. It's like even non-religious people are saying this. So that's the definition of hell, and it's going to get worse, you know. But all these things that are happening, all these like chaos and confusion and calamity and all that kind of stuff, that's not actually hell in a sense. That's actually judgment, you know, which is good. You know, God's judgment, even if it's good or bad, the way we experience it is a good thing. We're being acknowledged, all of us, collectively and individually. That's a good thing. That's an honor, you know. That's this setup, though, where we're not allowed to talk about God, you know. And this is what Matrix Media said. No one in the public, not even in the public, even in a private, we're not allowed to tell the truth or talk about God or bring God into the discussion, because we have clowns like this who are posting Christian simulation theory. And so like, this is hell, you know, that we're living in. And so the lake of fire and all those kind of things is going to let other people know that they're in hell. You know, the people that are receiving the judgment, hopefully it's not us, they're going to now know that they're in hell. We know this now. They don't yet. They're loving life, you know, love technology, love my new cell phone. You know, I got a job. I'm on the Satan's payroll and all that kind of stuff. They're fine. You know, they're good. But they're gonna find out. Everybody's gonna find out. You know, eventually that this is hell. How could this not be hell? Purity was hung on a cross here on earth. Some place of torment. That's a judgment. That's God's judgment. You know, that's a place where if we were to ever look at that, we would not be horrified. We would be relieved. You know, and again, we don't also want to create a place where God may be able to send us. Because then if there is some dimension out there that people are burning, spirits are burning, why would we not go there? You know, who is more or less worthy of something like that? So we also have to be careful to not create a place that God may send us.
And the Hadith, the second most authoritative text, specifically mentions that each of us has a scroll of deeds. So they're all playing upon the actual scriptures that were laid down by the Holy Spirit. Not only does the Creator review our scroll of deeds with us after death, but he also shows us the consequences of our actions, because we may not even realize that some of our deeds had repercussions beyond what we know. This is not a simple process, but requires broadening our perspective. Who is recording information in the scroll of the deeds, and how is it shown to us? In Islam,
This is kind of getting boring, so I may stop this soon. This is painful, but I'm at the 24-minute mark.
the recording angels, two angels which record our good deeds and bad deeds. Now you know you have seen the modern cartoons which show an angel and a devil on each shoulder. It turns out that the source of this picture is most likely from Islamic traditions which lead back to Abraham. It's all generating from the same source, where the prophet tells the faithful that each person has two entities, an angel and a jinn, or a good angel and a devil.
I have no idea how this is not a shot to him, but like, what is this article talking about at this point? So there's no thesis, but I'll wait and see.
One on each shoulder, which are there to guide us towards good or bad deeds. In the Christian traditions, the recording angel is the same as our guardian angels. And in both the Christian and Jewish traditions, the book of life is substituted for the scroll of deeds. In one case, it is simply a list of those who get into heaven. In other traditions, it is pretty much the same as the scroll of deeds. Could this really be happening? Our deeds and our repercussions beings, it doesn't make sense, recorded somewhere outside the rendered world by angels are literally messengers of God or Yahweh? And if so, how could it work?
So he's reading from an article where the sentence structure is awful, but it literally says, could this really be happening? Our deeds and their repercussions beings recorded somewhere instead of being recorded somewhere. So it's like, it's literally like taking time. And again, I'm bored too, so I don't blame him for that. But he's taking an article seriously where they don't even know how to write sentences.
Literally messengers of God or Yahweh? And if so, how could it work? More importantly, what does all this have to do with video games and the Matrix?
Good question.
It turns out quite a lot. It's obvious that as we go through life, there is a score, which is clearly visible to the angels who are not in our physical reality, but can see everything that is going on. You might say they are scorekeepers of a video game that we cannot see inside the rendered world. Moreover,
these people really want God to be, EA Sports, the CEO of EA Sports. Like, they're really stretching, and this is insane.
How would you record good deeds and bad deeds in a three-dimensional world? Again, video games give us the answer. In esports video games today, key moves are recorded while the game is being played by commenters who are outside of the rendered world, watching it. Usually this is done automatically using screen capture software and sometimes streamed live. That's what we've been constantly saying. Everything is recorded. It's like a constant thing.
This is just really weird. I think I'm going to stop this. Hopefully this article is almost over. But again, this is obvious that video games have analogies to like real life. Things are being recorded. Yeah, angels are aware of certain things, not everything. And, there's no reason to put AI on top of God and angels and using it as the framework to understand God. That's insane.
That like time goes by, everything's recorded. You can't get away from any of the deeds. That's why the best thing to do is to repent and to try to make the right choices. But anyways, could these recording angels actually...
Why don't people talk about that? This is the same issue with the Hebrews and End Times Teacher and all these other actors. What are those good deeds? What are we supposed to do when we live in a completely evil world right now? No one has the answer for that. The only answer is that all we can do is cry out to God to rescue us. That's it. Because there are no deeds that we can do. We're not even allowed to talk about God. Because again, we have videos like morons like this who are taking God out of everything, and so the Bible's going to be taken away. God is just an AI God or whatever, simulation, MATLAB simulation. Don't worry about the Bible too much. It's just, there's parameters set in this simulation and it's running right now and we're part of it. That's what's happening. So like, what are these good deeds? These people are, again, totally lost.
Actually be from AI? Is it likely that with 7 billion of us on this earth, there are 14 billion angels whose simple job it is to record everything we do? Modern computer science provides the answer that this guy thinks. It makes sense for AI to act like automated screen capture, which records the most important points in our games and then plays it back to us. Nice. Recently, I was part of a video game company which not only recorded key moments inside a 3D role-playing game like World of Warcraft and a League of Legends, it could play back the key moments so that we could review what we did right and what.
All right, I'm gonna cut it at that because this is horrible. But yeah, I mean, he's reading this article to then, say that the Bible and simulation, are to be thought of together, hand in hand in some way. And he's referencing a site, hackernoon.com. And so this is Awake Souls. They have like 17,000 subs. And yeah, I mean, if people go down this road and think that this is the truth or whatever, again, this just shows the kind of world that we live in. And if one person is deceived by this, it just proves how ridiculous, the world is. This is insane. Anybody who can literally has read even a little bit of the Bible and then goes to this video and takes any of this seriously, just further proof to me that we're in the end times, because this is just completely ridiculous. I actually would say I have some slightly more respect for people who, again, I don't have respect for either of these people because they're on the left-hand side, but people who use the Bible to make money and make a living, makes more sense, than what's going on here. This is just complete nonsense, because at least there are some verses in the Bible that talk about God, creating wealth, giving people blessing and all that kind of stuff. But there is not even an inkling of the Bible teaching any of this simulation stuff. This is just complete nonsense. And you don't even need any of this really at all in the days that we live in now, because once God exists, he is the author of everything. That's just all, that's the most important and overriding understanding that is needed, no matter what other revelation, that God gives us, that has to be the case. And everything that we see is a result of that, God's sovereignty, and his independent decision to make the earth. He didn't ask us, we didn't vote for it, he didn't, go back and forth with anybody on that. This was his idea. And so that alone debunks this entire video. But, I just wanted to go through it just to entertain this nonsense, and I'll cut it at that. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.